Going to start with adding and subtracting polynomials. Before we learn how to add and subtract polynomials, we have to review how to add and subtract just numbers. We learned this before that if you have the same sign numbers, you're going to combine and you keep the sign. In this example, 5 and 2, it's a positive 7. Negative 5 minus 2, it's a negative 7. They both have the same sign, so you keep the sign and you combine the numbers. If you have different signs, you subtract. In this example, 5 minus 2 gives you a 3, and the answer's sign is basically the big number's sign. In this case, negative 5 plus 2, you keep the number of the sign of the big number, which is negative 5. So the answer is negative 3. And the last rule is when you have two negatives next to each other, that turns to a plus. So it's important to understand these rules before we dig in deep into adding, subtracting polynomials. Also, the review on polynomials, it's very important to understand the basic things we learned. In this case, these polynomials have terms, and we said terms are separated by adding and subtracting. So in this case, we have 1, 2, 3, and 4 terms. So the number of terms is 4. You'll notice that each one has a letter except this one, and the exponent of the letter, in this case 1, 2, and 3, and the highest degree is the highest exponent. So in this case it is 3, that number 3. Now next to this x to the power 3, this number is called leading coefficient. So the leading coefficient is 7. And also the one without a letter is called constant term. Now the number in front of the x squared, in this case, it's a plus 1, and the number in front of the x, in this case, it's a 1, and because of the minus, the coefficient is a negative 1. Now adding, subtracting of polynomials is very easy. We just combine the like terms. Negative 5p squared, it's similar to 2p squared. So if you combine these together, you get a negative 3p squared. Same way goes with the p, a positive 1 and a minus 4p, that's a negative 3p. The negative 8 and a negative 2, they both have the same signs, so we combine them and we keep the sign of negative 10. And that's the answer of the polynomials addition. You notice how we were 6 terms, now we turn to be 3 terms only. The next one we're going to learn is subtracting. But before we subtract, if you have a negative outside a polynomial that is between parentheses, you're giving this negative to each term inside the parentheses. And what this negative do is basically switching the signs or changing the sign of the term. In this case, this term is positive, it turns to a negative. This term is negative, it turns to a positive. This term is negative, it turns to a positive. Now this is the new term after adding the negative to this term. Now if we have subtracting this from this, you notice that negative is going to go inside each one of the terms, switching the signs. So this becomes a negative, this becomes a negative, this becomes a positive. Now like we did in the addition, we combine the like terms. 6 minus 2, that becomes a 4. Negative x minus 7, negative 1 minus 7 is negative 8x. 9 and 10, it becomes a 19. And that's how we subtract polynomials. Now go ahead and do the practice, and if you have questions, let me know. Thank you for watching.